Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. Welcome to the first Sustainable Microenterprise and Development Program webinar. This is the first in a series of webinars we're going to be doing through 2012, and we're really happy to have everybody here. We understand there are some technological challenges with getting on for the first time, which require people to download some software. So we're going to take a couple of minutes to do some preliminary introductions and some preliminary announcements and make sure that everybody who wants to get on can get on. So I want to first of all kind of run through just a couple of the mechanics here. I'll be in 1 minute introducing our presenter, Veronica Torres. We will allow you to take part in the webinar by asking questions. You'll see a little box that says questions, and you can actually type your questions in there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to compile the questions and try to summarize them as best possible, and then I'll present them to Veronica. The question and answer period will happen at the end of the presentation that Veronica does. By the way, you might see my name coming up as Amy Sterndale, and I am not Amy Sterndale. Amy is the person whose the account for this webinar software is attached to, but my name is Bill Maddox. I'm the coordinator of the SMDP, and I'll be the moderator for today's conversation and for all of the webinars that we'll be doing this year. We're really happy to be able to present this webinar series as kind of an adjunct to the training programs that we do. Some of you are alumni, some of you may be new to the program, but to give you a little bit of background, we have been offering training for microfinance and enterprise development practitioners since 1999. For the first decade, the program was known as the Microenterprise and Development Institute, the MDI, which we offered in South Africa, Ghana, Tanzania, and in New Hampshire. And a couple of years ago, we came to the University of New Hampshire, to the Carsey Institute, and we renamed the program the Sustainable Microenterprise and Development Program. And so it is through the SMDP, through the Carsey Institute, that we are presenting the webinar today. We are really happy to be starting this webinar series with colleagues that we've done a lot of work with in the past, Making Sense International, which is based in Washington, D.C., and particularly with Veronica Torres. Veronica has done training with us in New Hampshire, in Ghana, and in Tanzania, and we're really pleased that she could be our presenter for the very first webinar. Veronica is an experienced youth enterprise and livelihood specialist with over 15 years of experience in designing, implementing, monitoring, and documenting integrated livelihood development programs for youth globally. She's led a number of projects in Morocco, Bolivia, Ecuador, Malawi, Bangladesh, West Bank, Gaza, and Colombia, focusing on designing financial services for young people. And she leads technical assistance in financial literacy, asset building, and workforce development, and youth-inclusive financial services for Making Sense International. Prior to joining Making Sense, she was with Save the Children as a global technical advisor on youth livelihoods programming, focusing on capacity building, youth-inclusive assessments, financial service development, and youth entrepreneurship and employment programs. Throughout her career, Veronica has influenced large microfinance and youth-serving organizations to incorporate demand-driven approaches to the work and develop capacity of teams to design youth-friendly products and programs. I just want to point out, we'll point this out now and also at the end of the presentation, Veronica will point this out, that this hour-long presentation we're doing right now is really a, as I like to call it, an infomercial for the full one-week training that we are offering in Ghana with Making Sense, a youth-inclusive financial services course that you can find out more about by visiting the SMDP website. We do have a registration period that's open right now until the end of February, and we're very happy to say we have a MasterCard Foundation scholarship opportunity for women practitioners from Africa. The deadline for the MasterCard applications is the February 1st, which is just about a week from today. So we urge you to get your essays in and apply if you're interested in getting the MasterCard opportunity, to be considered for the MasterCard opportunity. All right, well, without further ado, I'd like to introduce Veronica, and at this point she's going to take over the discussion until we're nearly done. I want to remind you, if you do want to ask questions, then please go ahead and type them in the question box, and at the end of the presentation we will open it up to some of your questions. By now, hopefully, most of you have joined us, and you don't have any technical problems. If you do have technical problems, let me remind you that we are going to have a link to this full webinar. We've recorded it, and you can view it online at the SMDP webinar site. So for any reason you either have to leave or you get disconnected, you won't miss it because you can come back and visit there. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Veronica Torres.
Thanks very much, Bill, and welcome everyone. This is a primer for Youth Inclusive Financial Services. Let me tell you, before getting into the presentation, and a little bit about Making Sense International. We're a social enterprise. We support youth, women, and other vulnerable populations to productively gain access to markets. We do this by enhancing financial services and financial literacy, also through value chain inclusion and enhancing value chains workings, as well as developing capacity of organizations to build entrepreneurship skills of vulnerable populations. And we also hold an annual conference on youth economic empowerment, and this will be taking place this coming September again this year. So that's what we do. And I wanted to get into now youth and financial services, and share with you a bit more about how we do this. So basically today there's a very large, significant population of young people between 12 and 24, and we are focusing on this age range particularly because of the opportunities both on the savings and credit sides of things. 1.3 billion of these young people live in developing countries, and for them to really enhance their opportunities around employment or self-employment or ongoing education, we see financial services playing a significant role, as many financial institutions also have, in terms of seeing this population as a market opportunity. So I wanted to get into a little bit of, well, what does it take to really develop financial services for young people? What are some guiding principles around this? And from our work with collaborating with a number of financial institutions, reviewing case studies from these financial institutions, discussing with practitioners in terms of the work that they're doing, financial service providers, youth serving organizations, we've come up with 6 emerging guidelines. First of which is involve youth in market research and product development. And this may seem like it's an obvious thing, but it's not something that financial institutions have really gained a lot of traction on until just recently. And it does take a certain level of skill sets to do this well with figuring out product attributes as well as the kind of delivery channels most pertinent to the population. The next guideline is develop products and services that reflect diversity of youth. Now, we're definitely talking about what kinds of key attributes need to be considered here for young people to really have the access, and this is in terms of marital, parental status, education, employment status, and we definitely realized that not a range of different products can be developed for particular populations, but there has to be some particularity in the product for it to be attractive to the population targeted. And then the third one is ensure that youth have safe and supported spaces. We've definitely discovered that this is most pertinent to young women, and a recent study that was undertaken by the Population Council in Uganda, it speaks to this as a key guideline around girls' access to financial services and savings so that they're not more vulnerable as they actually transact with money. The next emerging guideline is provide link to offer youth complementary non-financial services. So for example, we know that access to savings for some young people, especially very vulnerable populations of young people, may need to be complemented with protection services, mentoring services, and in a lot of cases, young people also need to be able to be financially literate to manage their money. The next emerging guideline is focus on the core competencies of the through partnerships. And this aligns well with the previous emerging guideline in that a lot of financial institutions realize that other services are needed, but in that realization, they also do need to link to partners versus trying to do non-financial services on their own. And then the last one is the importance of involving community and starting with family. A lot of projects, financial institutions do discover the important role families and teachers and communities play in supporting young people to actually take on their savings, continue to do that regularly, that they may, as a family, have a role in budgeting and managing their finances. So those are the emerging guidelines and kind of the principles which are always in evolution, changing in terms of what we learn as well. Now, what makes young people good potential clients? First of all, I've always come across people who are skeptical and say, well, young people are poor, and so how can they possibly save? And in a lot of countries where there's been a significant number of studies, you will discover that, in fact, a lot of young people are, one, economically active. Secondly, that they're young people, especially those who are under 14, do have money that goes through their hands. There's money coming in from the family, relatives from overseas. And so the notion of savings is possible for them. In fact, in a lot of cases, they practice it. And they need safer places to put their money. Young people also borrow money. They, as they grow older, they are involved in small economic activities. They borrow from friends. They borrow from family to start up an activity. Existing youth clients demand more personalized services. In some cases, financial institutions actually have not done a segmentation of their existing client base, and in doing so discover there are young people as clients, and that if they are to do more marketing to them, they would actually, this client base would grow. So that's a discovery of financial institutions that look at their portfolio and find that anywhere between 15 to 25% of their existing clients are young people between 16 to 24 years of age. So for example, in Bangladesh, clients are as young as 15 years of age because they're actually the information taken in for a young woman would be whether she's married or not necessarily her age. And then young people need to learn while they are young about the use of financial services. The earlier they can interact with a financial institution, the more savvy they become about what kinds of products and services become more useful to them at different points in their lives. So that's to give you a sense of how young people could become or potentially good clients. And next I want to just talk through a little bit of what it takes to do good product development design for young people. And first of all is to be very clear about who is your market segment to be served, where are they, where's their socioeconomic status, what age group are you looking to serve, and with what product. And that's very important because it delineates to what extent you're going to do market research. I mean, it has budgetary implications. It has implications for the financial institution itself in terms of what it can actually deliver to the market.
Veronica, I just want.
The next step.
Veronica, can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry,
Yes.
we're just getting some reports that the sound quality is a little rough. So I don't know if you're can move a little closer to your microphone. It's maybe your internet connection just seems to be going on and off, but just to try it. So thank you. Sorry about that.
No problem. It's okay. And then I'm hoping it's clearer.
Yeah, maybe a little better now. Thanks.
Okay. Then the next point is to really the importance of validating market research tools with young people who represent their target market. And these are focus group tools, interview tools. It's important to really make sure your language is understandable, makes sense with young people. Sometimes the terms should be validated to that they resonate with young people, and then those can be finalized and used with the market population. The next is to develop a doable market research plan that considers what is adaptable to young clients, and this is something we're discovering is important to do when we do institutional assessments as a financial service provider. We find out that they may already be doing great work in the area of savings. So, we realized there doesn't need to be that significant amount of work done on the market research to adapt a product to a young population. But we need to consider what are the specifics of that may be where we focus in on the market research. And that also depends on what are the budgetary parameters under which we're working with to do that. And then the next one is it's very important. We know that the kind of data that we get from young people, it's often hard to analyze, to capture and analyze. And it takes significant skill to go through and actually understand the meaning of the responses from young people and actually then translate them to responses that have an implication for product features. And we do realize in working with Palestine with financial institutions like RIADA that this was a challenge, and we actually worked with them to understand a lot of the data and then turn that into product attributes. And in the case of Zambia, for example, we're working with the Population Council and NatSave, and understand that we actually have to bring in specialists in the area of girls, so we can work with them to actually review the data. And then we definitely look at a next phase of market research, which is really to test the concept before pilot testing. Again, going back to young people and checking in with them around what are the kinds of, how do we validate some of these ideas, and before going off and actually trying them out in the product. So what are the kinds of things we're discovering that are unique to young people in designing financial services. We are definitely realizing that there's slight modifications to the terms and conditions. So as a young person has very small amounts of money for savings, we realize that the minimum amount of savings needs to be a threshold which is accessible to them, that fees are not going to work for them. There are other options they can undertake if there are fees. We also, in cases of where young people don't have identification, are looking at ways with financial institutions of developing some kind of identification with the financial institution so they can gain access to savings accounts. We know that there's definitely the need for complementary non-financial services. Again, and this has a lot to do for first even understanding the advantages, disadvantages of saving with a formal financial institution, or other options that they may already be considering, and then issues around protection, and again, what are some of the kinds of special considerations for example, girls, and what are the supports required for them. And then definitely we are finding delivery channels and marketing techniques to be unique. For example, we have seen that some financial institutions are actually partnering with schools in order for young people to access savings accounts, or that the marketing may need to be specialized. So marketing needs to speak to young people's sense of, in the case of a credit product, for example, their sense of being independent, being young adults, and that they themselves can be contributors. So the colors, the general feel of the marketing brochures or posters will reflect that. And then I want to talk a little bit about the kinds of savings products now that are out there from financial institutions. There's a number of them that have done a lot of focus on the actual savings side of things and developed savings products especially with the support of Nike Foundation and others, focused primarily on girls. So, for example, House Bank in Mongolia has savings accounts for young women between 14 and 24 years of age that also has complementary financial education. To date, they have opened over 6,000 accounts for young women, and the minimum balance to open an account in Mongolia is $2.50, which is 70% lower than the minimum for adult accounts. They have a passbook. The fees are 50% lower than adults' accounts. They can save from anywhere from 3 to 24 months, and they can earn interest from 10 to 14%. Demand accounts offer 6%. So when you want regular withdrawals, the interest rate is lower. And there is a small fee for withdrawing. And Hatton Bank in Sri Lanka has reached over 600,000 student savers, and they have now been able to raise over $65 million in savings deposits. Hatton Bank works very closely with the Ministry of Education to establish student banking units at schools, and to establish also the habit of savings, and so that young people have this as a life skill over a period of time. And Hatton Bank trains young students to actually in the country to certify them to manage the student banking units. And Hatton has been very successful at doing this. ADAPEM in the Dominican Republic has two savings products, one targeted at girls, and again, in some cases, accounts can be opened up by parents and established at birth. And so that's one of the type of accounts from birth to 15 years of age. The second one is for 16 to 24 years of age. And again, each young person receives their passbook, and having visited ADAPEM, one of the key things they also want to do is make sure that the young person can access their account, but that the adult, the guardian, needs to access the account with the young person there because they are the holder of the account and have the passbook. So both are required in that case. And then KREP Bank also has established the Go Girl account, and there is a total value on the savings of over $6,000 as of September 2010, when we last had information from Kenya. And these accounts were 10 to 19-year-old girls, and again, and the overall purpose of setting up this account by KREP is to help young women actually establish the discipline of financial management. And then Equity Bank in Kenya has been working with over 74,000 youth entrepreneurs over the last 3 years between the ages of 18 to 30 to help them really access credit. And working with the Kenya Youth Enterprise Development Fund through the government to do this, supporting their establishment of businesses throughout the country. So those are examples to give you a range of savings, and one in terms of equity, of the kinds of different products out there that are demonstrating a demand from young people for products particularly for that. So this gives you kind of a sense of what are the current principles in terms of designing financial services for young people, what are some of the key steps to take, and what is out there, what can we learn about in terms of what are the existing products. And we definitely go much deeper into how to do this in our Youth Inclusive Financial Services courses that we do in partnership with the SMDP. And we are offering the following course components come March. One is Sound Practices in Youth Inclusive Financial Services. We go much more deeply into the emerging guidelines and their implications for financial institutions. We actually take a very practical approach to youth inclusive market research, have a field component where practitioners can actually go out and do market research with young people, bring back the data, and go through the data analysis procedures to learn more about what it takes to actually look at data from young people and the implications for product attributes and marketing and delivery. And then youth inclusive savings products. We look at what's out there in terms of savings. What does it mean to adapt or significantly change products and savings products for access for young people? And we are going to be offering this course from March 19th to March 23rd, and as Bill mentioned before, there are scholarships available for attending the SMDP courses in Ghana. So I will wrap up there and address any questions.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Veronica. We have a number of questions, so I think I'll just kind of take them from the top and do my best to answer them as we go along here. first question comes from Gary Miller, and he wants to know where can we find teaching material for youth regarding finance and the importance of savings?
Where to find materials?
Yes, teaching material specifically for youth regarding finance and the importance of saving.
Okay. So there are a significant number of materials out there. There's one that was recently developed by Microfinance Opportunities. Microfinance Opportunities, I believe, now actually sells the material, which is around youth and savings, but mostly youth and financial education. So it's financial education for youth, and I'm sure you can access them through their website. The other one that is on website is called Money and Youth, which is a Canadian organization that puts out this material, and it's again it's a teaching material around helping young people manage their money. So those are a couple of resources for you.
Great, thank you. Next question comes from Ruhanga Wabare Godfrey, and he comments that on the emergency guidelines there are good salient points that the implementing agency should look into. He wants to know, does this consider the cost-benefit analysis, bearing in mind that the financial institution is a profit maximization entity? So I think he's interested in trying to look at the impact of the cost of the products, possibly.
Yes, and definitely, just to that point, that's why we definitely think that the financial institution should stick to what it does well. But there are in terms of considering cost-benefit analysis, you probably know that it's differently for savings than for credit, and that what we're finding with financial institutions that take on savings is that you have to look at cost-benefit in terms of medium and longer term, in terms of really developing a client base rather than just saying we're going to get a return on the savings product.
Okay, great. Derek Williams is asking the question, do you have any examples of U.S.-based youth savings products?
Unfortunately, I know that there's been a lot of work done in the U.S., especially around savings and birth accounts. And I couldn't give you the exact information on that, but I'm sure it's easy to Google, and definitely there's much more work being done around doing this within states in the U.S.
Okay. Probably they could just, I know that there are some community development credit unions that do this work, so maybe just, Googling community development credit unions or youth savings in the U.S. you could find something.
Yes.
Let's see. I'm not sure if I understand this question. Rodrigo Orejuela has asked, why are specific savings for girls?
Yes, that is a good question. There's been a significant amount of work done by key stakeholders, Nike Foundation, Population Council, financial institutions who are their partners, around specifically building assets for girls. And this comes out of a lot of research done by the Population Council and partners around the importance of making investment in girls, because it does lead to greater issues of poverty alleviation. And that is the rationale for the investment, the particular investment in girls.
Okay, great. Gary Miller is asking, can these youth in the savings programs withdraw funds for any reason, or are they required to save for a long-term goal?
So there is, in the case of KREP, was discovered was that girls wanted to have the freedom to both deposit and withdraw, and that was a result of doing the market research with them. So the terms and conditions of those accounts are such that they can do that. And Hatton Bank actually has long-term savings accounts, so they promote the habit of savings. And actually, some recent research that was done, I believe it's Poverty Action Lab or Poverty, one of those research entities who actually said that in a lot of cases are, it's important to have the ability to establish, in order to establish goals, long-term savings and some kind of condition around withdrawals is important, and that's something that was recently shared. So it does depend on the population and also kind of the goals of a particular project.
Okay, great. Aaron Lewis is asking, has there been much research into the effectiveness of using mobile money, cell phone banking with young people?
Not that I know of, but it is something that financial institutions want to do more of, because it is something that the cell phone is something that is much more prevalent with young people, and I'm sure that's something being tested. I'm thinking in Kenya with M-Pesa being so successful. So. Not that I've seen, but there may be something to look into more later on as more institutions get into this.
Okay. Thierry Shuru is asking, as far as the Kenya example on loans to youth, how do the products balance the high risk usually attached to this age group and the cost of the products? My concern is having more expensive and unsustainable products for youth.
Yes, and I think it's important to look at the issue of risk. I think financial institutions are challenged to assess risk with young people, mostly because they don't have the traditional kinds of assets that adults have. One thing is that financial institutions are figuring out risk mitigation options, and also the fact that in a lot of cases it hasn't been proven that youth are any riskier than adult clients. In fact, one financial institution in Indonesia discovered that youth were better repayers than adults.
Wow. So it's just a kind of a bias that people have against youth that doesn't actually play out in reality.
That's true.
Yeah. This is kind of a related question on why youth are good clients in terms of the Bangladesh example. What would be the recommended lowest age in case of defaulting? The recovery mechanism would be kind of an uphill task. This is Godfrey asking again. In Uganda, there's 16-year-olds are considered youth in Uganda and regarded as minors, and thus they can't be entered into a valid contract. So are there some legal issues around collection and who can actually enter into a contract to take a loan that crop up depending on which country you're in?
Definitely, and this is definitely something that has come up in a number of countries, and generally Bangladesh tends to be an example that's unlike many countries because of they don't deal around the age is often hidden behind the issue of married or non-married, and in a number of other countries, often what happens is that the most economically savvy person in the family will manage the business, and the family figures out who takes the loan. It may not necessarily be that 16-year-old that comes into a contractual agreement with the financial institution, and maybe their mother, who is over 18, that does that. And so, and then there's issues around, of course, then recovery mechanisms. I think a lot of financial institutions have tried to look at in a lot of cases the women or men to take the loan, and then it is an issue of who is really running the business, and the financial institution may need to know more about that, looking behind the contract itself to understand what's going on within the family economic unit, to know what's going on. And then it is important, because you may want to say this is a family-run business. This person takes the contract. There is an understanding as to the responsibility of that, and I think the financial institution could be gaining up much more intelligence around that.
We have a question. Do we have varying savings products for youth in schools and those out of school? In other words, is there a different product if a child is not, or a young person is not in school versus those that are in school?
I think in a lot of cases there is, the financial institutions are not too concerned with that, although they are, and in a lot of cases that kind of differentiation is not very clear in a lot of countries. A lot of young people actually do both. They go to school and they actually do a little part-time work and then save money. So there hasn't been any kind of differentiation that I know of. But the whole notion of being able, I know in the case of Kenya, the whole ability for girls to be able to withdraw had to do with the fact that they were working, and secondly, they had emergencies to deal with. In that case, that account, those kinds of savings accounts, were for girls who were not in school, but who wanted to continue to learn in some ways, and they were saving towards that.
Okay, great. So this question is from Benjamin Benet Mensa, who says, hello, Veronica. Thank you for your wonderful presentation. I just have one question. The concept of youth financial services has been an area I am planning on investing in. These problems always come up with youth financial services in developing countries. The risk of default, interest rates being affordable for the youth, and currency depreciation. How do you manage all these factors when your primary targets are not earning any significant income? Thank you.
Right, and again, I think the issue is around assuming that they are not gaining, assuming that they're not economically active or not significantly economically active, because that's why they're already part of a portfolio of a financial institution in a lot of cases. Secondly, a lot of the complementary services are required for young people to be more successful in managing their businesses and growing their businesses so they can be better clients of financial institutions. So a couple of things there. Some of them are already good at it, and there's an opportunity to expand on that market. Secondly is the importance of those complementary services for them to be much more successful borrowers.
Okay, sorry, I'm just having to unmute my mic here. Let's see here. Here's an easy question. No, this is be a challenging question. What are the major financial normative keystones for youth financial services to be developed? Maybe she should come. That's from Marisol Fernandez. That sounds like we should come to the course in Ghana and find out. But that's probably hard to answer in a short answer. But
it is. It is, and it's hard to, in terms of the particular arities of financial services, of the financial savings, which population, and I would suggest that she comes to the course because it is also the importance of looking at the financial institution itself. What has it already been successful at doing? How adaptable is it? And I would say that's a key factor. Even before you start the market research, how is the financial institution done this? Has it done this before? Is it adaptable and flexible? And has the senior management of that financial institution bought into young people as a real potential market? Because if that's not there, I wouldn't even start.
So it really is having kind of a top to bottom commitment that requires that could also, I suppose, also involve investors and donors, that
That's right.
there should be really kind of total alignment all the way through.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see. Andrew Suka is asking, some institutions in Uganda shy away from providing youth-tailored products due to high mobility, people always in transit. What can be done in such a situation?
Yes, and the mobility issue is one that has come up. I think it is that's where the opportunity of the cell phone really is, comes in because young people are mobile. They may be going from one city to another, and this is where I think the opportunity lies with mobile banking.
Okay. This is from Terry Shuro. From your experience, would working with youth in groups be better than working with individuals, considering the mobility of youth?
That's one way of looking at there's experiences where, for example, in Malawi, there have been groups of savers in Malawi made up of young people who have changed the terms and conditions of the group workings to fit mobility. So, for example, someone that has to leave in 3 months because they have to migrate to Mozambique and go to work in Mozambique may be a better member for a 3-month period rather than a 6 to 12-month period. So those kinds of group mechanisms have worked well, and they're adaptable to those kinds of situations, and definitely there are examples out there.
So it really is it's a function of really doing some good market research and getting an opportunity to really know your clients and what their needs are, and the kind of not just the usual things, but the unexpected things that may come up that 4 or 5 months down the road would really impact the program. Let's see. We have from Gary Miller, do any programs integrate savings groups and teaching regarding savings into the school curriculums?
School curriculums, that is fun. I'm not sure about how much there is in different countries, but some of that work is starting to be looked at more in terms of the what kind of content when, and the importance of starting early. I know in the case of Making Sense, we actually worked with the Ministry of Education in Palestine, for example, to work with us, invited in by the Ministry of Finance, to help the Ministry of Education incorporate some financial literacy into grade 11 education, but doing so taking into account what was already the curriculum and not changing it, because that is their curriculum, so just enhancing it. So those, I mean, there are areas of opportunity, but I don't know how much more of that has taken place in other countries.
Great. This is from Derek Williams. How easy or difficult is it to adapt youth financial service models that are being used in the U.S. to developing countries? Go ahead.
Unfortunately, I don't know as much about the U.S. savings and the U.S. products. I know that when I started becoming much more involved in this area of work, I did want to find out what were the offerings of the financial institution ready for existing populations, to understand how adaptable those products could be for young people. So I didn't do that much thinking about models from other places, but was able to share a little bit about kinds of savings accounts that exist. For example, here in Canada, where I live, just around kinds of savings accounts my kids have, which is the savings account is free of any fees, no minimum deposit requirement, and free of fees until they turn 18. So it really is to develop a relationship with them as potential clients for the future, and basically the bank is big enough and has other means of income to actually do this kind of offering. So those are the kinds of things I definitely look at with financial institutions in other places. How far can you go without putting at risk the institution itself? So it has to be diversified enough to be able to do that.
So these aren't cookie cutter models that can be just picked up and replicated elsewhere. You really have to look at the institutional,
the financial institution,
and also the situation in the country. Okay, my friend Santiki Ugbe from Nigeria, hi Santiki, has asked the question, what are the examples of complementary services that go with providing financial services for youth?
So the kinds of things that definitely I've been working a great deal on is financial literacy, so basic financial skills, budgeting, understanding advantages, disadvantages of different financial institutions, or even ways of saving, financial practices. And then the ability to enable young people to ask questions of financial institutions. Often a young person thinks that the financial institution is not for them, but if they realize that it could be when they know what they offer. The other is skills around dialogue with financial institutions around business and what the business looks like, understanding how you discuss assets that are not the obvious assets a financial institution looks for when they're going to provide credit. So those are entrepreneurship, but it's really understanding what a bank looks for in your financial planning and thinking about the business. So those are two examples.
Great, thank you. We have time for just a couple more questions here. This is from Terry Shuro, who says, Veronica and Amy, and actually maybe Terry missed that I am not Amy, I'm actually Bill. Amy is just the person whose account this is. But in any event, Veronica and Amy / Bill, thank you for such a wonderful, thorough, short presentation. Your responses to questions have been good. Please share more on the examples. So I don't think we have time to share examples, but I think actually one thing that I'll point out is that Making Sense does have a newsletter, and they have a website that has a lot of the stories of the work that Making Sense is doing specifically around youth financial services. So you can go to the Making Sense website to get some more details of examples. Do you have other suggestions in terms of where Terry could see examples?
Yes,
Veronica?
so on actually yfslink.org, we have the case studies that are referred to. A number of these institutions, Haas Bank, Hatton Bank, so you can look at more information on that on yfslink.org.
Great. Okay, and we'll just ask one more question. This is from Andrew Suka. Do you think that adopting and benchmarking performance of financial service providers would push them to serve the youth? Yeah, let's just leave it at that.
I think they in some cases they do. I think in some cases it may help. In some countries, I think in the other situations, it's actually getting them to realize that they would be actually selling themselves short by not looking at the youth population. And this is something, for example, the Fonds in Haiti has realized, oh my God, if we don't actually go younger than 35-year-old women, we're going to be out of business. So that is another kind of way of helping financial institutions realize the potential. And some countries the government may decide to do some of that call to benchmark to say an X percentage of your client base needs to be this age. In some cases, financial institutions should just start segmenting their portfolio to really understand who it is they serve, because there are a lot of myths out there because they don't know who they serve.
I think that if an institution is going to be very committed and have a long-term view in doing this work, they would have to really build some type of benchmarking into their overall system to make sure that they were living up to their goals, right?
Yes.
All right. Well, folks asked really great questions, and really appreciate the thoughtfulness that you're able to put in. And Veronica is a consummate pro, and really came up with, I think, a answer that addressed everything that people came up with. As I said, we are going to rebroadcast this, so you can go to the webinar website of SMDP website at Carsey Institute, and if you want to listen to this again, or if you came in late, Veronica, if you could just advance the slide. And what I want to do is, first of all, just thank Veronica for doing a great job. I really appreciate she's the guinea pig in this webinar series, and she did it with a great deal of grace, and all the technology works. So let's hear a big silent, you won't be able to hear it, but everybody applaud from wherever you are for Veronica. Thank you very much. I also want to point out to everybody that this is a series, so this is the first webinar of what will be a number of webinars. The next webinar we will have, and we'll have a registration up in a day or two for that, will be on Wednesday, March 7th. Remember that these all start at 11 o'clock U.S. time, and that's right now GMT -5. But we are going to have a guest coming in from the Association for Self-Financed Communities, ACAF, Jean-Claude Rodriguez Mazans, who is doing very interesting work in Spain and in other European countries with savings groups, organizing savings groups among immigrants, among disabled people, among working people, and so it'll be very interesting to hear about this whole savings group movement in Europe. So we'll send a promo about that out to everybody so you're reminded about it. I want to thank Veronica one more time and Making Sense for being the first participant in our webinar series. And I thank all of you for joining us and for being attentive and asking great questions. And I wish you all a great day, and hopefully we'll see you here at the next webinar. Thank you very much.